Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Metallica titled Enter Sandman. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on YouTube, continuing my weekly videos of songs that my students like to play on their instruments and I am liking to listen to. We're going to listen through this track from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. I may or may not have a slight bias towards Metallica's music, but let's go, let's do it. Can we make it bigger? We can. There we go. Cool. Fantastic sound of those toms. That's plenty loud, isn't it, with those guitarists as well? I mean, the leveling is fantastic as well. James's voice is just flawless here. Very cool response there with the guitars. I don't know if you can hear that as well. There's a little bit of whispering on the right side of the stereo field there. I didn't notice that until I listened to this through headphones, but it's exquisite, man. I mean, it's creepy, but... Very vibrato there on that bend. I mean, it's a really squeaky guitar tone, but it works well for the genre. Not in a bad way, I mean, like, it's got a lot of high end.
Closet
It's just so uncomfortable, isn't it? I think you relate to nightmares. No, it's really well handled. So you can, in the fade out, you can hear what's going on with the extra little bit of improvising and stuff like that were going on there. You can tell they've like slowly slid the fader down or had some automation on it so that the volume goes out in the fade out, but they're still playing their instruments. I suppose what I'm trying to say is it's just kind of cool to have a fade out and to still kind of know that they had more in the tank, but they knew when to finish as well. It's an art. It really is. We're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Metallica titled Into Sandman. Now, first of all, what do I think this track is about? I think that this track is about like a kid just having a whole bunch of nightmares, like fever dreams, and that's the Into Sandman. You can see the Sandman here, you know, looking very, very angsty and evil and everything like that. I think that might be him, and it's just, or it might be the kid when he's older, I'm not sure. Maybe the kid's had a life full of nightmares. They're just constantly like getting sort of like chased by things, being surrounded by things, and you know, like when you fall asleep, just having that. I mean, there's someone who had recurring nightmares and sleep paralysis from like the age of like, I don't know, 5 until like 16. I can relate to it to an extent. Although my stuff was like mutant zombie cats as opposed to like falling off of skyscrapers and getting chased by trucks. Anyway, in terms of what worked about this track, you know, with that in mind, I feel like there'd be an audience. When there clearly is, this track's got like 748 million plays on YouTube alone. You know, 1 billion on Spotify, I'm not mistaken, as well as other streaming platforms. But I feel like it's a story that people relate to, and I think that James, the vocalist, does an extremely good job of nailing the vocal take on it. There is this kind of edge to it, kind of a fire behind it that I think is extremely welcome. I think the last thing you want in a track like this is to play it too safe. You really need to kind of like kick the listener's teeth in a little bit, especially with the type of music that you're doing with the distorted guitars, the bass and the drums there. But with the Black Album, it was also a time when Metallica were trying to go, I suppose, more range in other less sort of like thrashy directions. It's not that they didn't have that beforehand, but this was definitely one of the albums which was kind of pivotal and a bit controversial because of the style and genres like the adjustments that were to be made. I think Kirk specifically spoke about wanting to do some more sort of like more bluesy solos and stuff like that, which is, I mean, not that the pentatonics were absent before, but there was certainly a lot more of them within this album, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that getting back to James, the vocals here are fantastic, very comfortable in the head and chest voice, lots of vocal frying required. There were harmonies in the chorus sections as well, which were a nice sort of like a little bit of additional development to the end of the chorus sections. There were also these kind of whispered parts that were very kind of creepy. There was also like the pastor and then like, or the father, and then like the son doing a prayer as well. There's lots of different voice things going on. It was interesting having the guitar in one take and then in the Neverland with the whispered part on the other side before the chorus section and the it's just, there's a lot of creepy stuff going on, but it's expressed well. The story comes through. The notes are hit really cleanly. Genuinely a really solid vocal take all around. We're very confident. It's also worth noting that we are also playing the rhythm guitar parts and this incredibly tight sort of palm muting on those down chugs. So, you know, we've got it sorted, you know. And these aren't easy riffs to sort of like navigate between, especially singing like that with counter melodies or counter rhythms and stuff like that. So I appreciate the finesse on display to be able to sort of multitask. A little bit of legato for like a wail at the end was just like sort of like the icing on the cake. And the track itself at 5 minutes 30 is very well fleshed out. It's quite an extended instrumental intro there, with that clean guitar take with a bit of, I suppose, a bit of chorus or like effects on it, and like simmers in the ether there. You have the drums coming eventually with these, like, I'm not going to give you like a run by play of it because you've just heard the track, but it's great to have one thing come in and then the drums come in, and then you sort of like have the tom focus there. We're not sort of immediately going towards the cymbals like a safe space. We are allowing ourselves to have some almost like tribal kind of like feel to it, the way we kind of pulse forward with the eights, and the bass and the sort of guitars come in, and there's a nice sort of chug and thud to it. There are lots of power in that low end, and we articulate ourselves neatly in that low to mid range there with a bit of heaviness and there's like an eventual crescendo with the snares to kind of lead us up into that sort of main sort of like chorus or like kind of like motif there, with the recognizable kind of 3-in-1 turn. There are several, different parts of the track outside of the instrumental intros, and as well as the sort of the solo sections there. There's also the verses, which kind of mirror a lot of what we had initially, and then we had the choruses, and the choruses had they kind of modulated a little bit. I suppose the bridge kind of like did a key change, didn't it? And did the chorus have a key change as well? I think there was just like some really interesting manipulation of the expected chords and notes and bass lines and stuff within this track. We weren't just sticking to E minor the entire time. Either that or we were sort of modally playing with stuff in a way that wasn't jazzy at all. It was very sort of like rock and roll and metal, but just to use the pentatonics and chromatics occasionally with the scale choices and stuff like that was fantastic. I mean, just structurally the transfers between parts, especially how like the choruses had like a slightly sort of shorter end through taken away through beats. Like we had like that Take My Hand part was like the same length as the previous 2 times of it. And then we had the Often Never Neverland as a quieter sort of like fade out for the chorus before we go into the next part. It's just a nice way to do choruses where typically we have 4 rounds of like an idea. This song had 3 rounds of it, and then like something to sort of adjust before you kind of get the palate and go straight back into the heaviness. Whether it was the verse section or like the intro riff, or if it was the solo sections. And even after that huge guitar solo, distinctive one from Kirk, you have that interlude section again with the prayer and then the hush little baby don't say a word. And it's more of James, and then it kind of leads you back into it with an eventual crescendo, almost like you're in your safe place, and then suddenly again you're kind of taken out of it, and then exit light, and boom, you're back into the final outro part with that fade out at the end. There's just so many different unique, interesting things occurring within this track there, just with distinct ideas that it kind of mirrors a lot of the really cool stuff they were doing in the 80s, but in a far more sort of controlled way, in a way that I think is more palatable to maybe a less kind of like open-minded audience, and maybe they would have heard the stuff in the 80s and been like, this is a bit too much. Songs like Enter Sandman, for example, were just a little bit more sort of like open to those who are into sort of like the more hard rock stuff as opposed to the metal. Instrumentally, I feel like there are a lot of strong performances here. I actually like the bass lines. I like that we didn't overperform with those. I think Jason did the bass for this, I'm not mistaken, Jason Newsted. And we were very comfortable like working with those root notes and sort of like being the foundation and the floor of it. We weren't trying to overcompensate or overcomplicate there. It allowed for the rhythm riffs to kind of like snake around various sort of power chordal melody, and also like arpeggiated sections there in the bridge parts. With a little bit of kind of like tension with some of those chromatics. We never missed a beat, and we're nice and tight with the drums. I appreciated what Lars was doing on the drum kit within this. Again, that pulse initially it's distinctive. When people hear it, they can hear, oh, okay, dum 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 bum 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 bum. And it's very easy to play along to in part because it's just so ergonomic as an actual drum beat. It's not that we're trying to sort of like play something that's catchy or anything like that. It's also that we're doing what's easier for Lars to do. And that's not me diminishing his ability as a drummer. That's sort of me saying we're just trying to be more efficient. There are some really cool sort of like snare and sort of like tom elements there, and some fundamental sort of hi-hat and crash elements there with accents and offbeats and syncopated parts. But often we are sticking with the eighths, quarter and snare note pulse, and we re-rock it out, man. And it works really well, especially again with the palm muted sort of rhythm chords there, and the bass line sort of like supporting underneath. There's some technicality to some of the fill transfers and stuff in certain sections, such as before that, Hush Little Baby Don't Say a Word there. Like we can play the drums, though it's just knowing when to sort of like pop off. The lead solo section from Kirk's lead guitar was fantastic. Again, wonderful sort of like understanding of how to use different bends and sort of like slides, and the wah pedal as well had a lot of flair to it. There was a lot of sort of like quick kind of 16th and sort of like 32nd note kind of shreddy stuff going on as well there, which was nice and sort of fiery there to sort of indicate and implicate the chaos there was present within what we were discussing. The the sort of danger and tension there, as well as just being a nice sort of bit of like a really intriguing alternate lead to James. And it also had a nice sort of like understanding of how to meet what everyone else is doing. It could have like just continued over the gap that was before that part, but it knew to stop and kind of almost mirror what was going on with some of the vocal parts and little breaks before the off to Never Never Been parts. So it's just having that chemistry between the band members that's really important. And the fact that it's a nice sort of like raw organic performance that's quite well played is the icing on the cake there. So ultimately I feel instrumentally there are a lot of really cool ideas there, as well as the Foley and vocal elements that come together and make a really interesting piece. The main sort of theme of it, working around the minor orient there, not sticking to the Phrygian, but working with kind of a bluesy increment, almost indicates the sort of sadness that we're feeling about the situation around the tension from the distorted guitars and the angst, and sort of like kind of like how heavy that is almost indicates how much the truth is kind of hitting home. I think like the bluesy modulations there in the bridge section really sort of like center and give context to what we're doing with the pentatonics within the scale lead patterns. But it's all about the force as well. The power chords are not as emotional, and we really need the force or the fury to hit. We go away from those complicated major minors or none of those extensions or even necessarily chromatics in certain elements. We just want the first and fifths there, and we kind of slam our home. It's all about how kind of tight and chunky everything is, and that's what makes it heavy, and that's what makes it great to listen to, especially with like James doing whatever he wanted to over top in a way that makes sense. Ultimately, I think it's just the studio production that's the icing on the cake. I think that James's vocals are recorded extremely well. They're nice and clear within the mix and well leveled. The guitars are double tracked there, have a nice sort of shimmer and sheen to them with enough weight in the low end to kind of carry them and be a great pairing to what the bass and drums are doing, where there's no resonant frequencies in this frequency spectrum. The drums are nice as sidechain without too much. There's a nice sort of dynamic range to the drums as well. They're not the same loudness all the time. You can tell they're sort of playing together in a room or sort of like in together in separate rooms, but it was like there are organic takes there where they could simply just play their instruments. Again, the use of the whispers on different sides of the stereo field kind of flesh out the track really neatly. We experiment with pauses as well. We don't have the similar kind of intensity in terms of dynamic range or like the track itself all the time. That we mess with expectations. And that nice sort of like fade out at the end there with the automation on the volume there, or something like allowing us sort of like jam out until the end. It almost seems like the story is coming to a close, but you kind of want to hear more for it, you know, almost like it might return at some point. It doesn't seem like it's fully done. It's nice and loud without pumping, so it's the bus compression limiting is handled. Honestly, like one of my favorite tracks, primarily because of the production. I love how clean it is. I can completely understand and respect what we're trying to accomplish here with that. I don't exactly know who was responsible for doing the production on this. I think Rick Rubin, if I'm not mistaken, or Bob Rock, one of those two. I could be completely sort of stuffing out. One of those two was involved. They clearly know what they're doing. And it just helps that everyone is just able to play their instruments and write really interesting music. So ultimately, that's effectively my review of this track from an act named Metallica titled Into Sandman. Yeah, honestly, I understand why my students enjoy it. Hopefully you did too. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SB Reviews. Spiderhands out.